Noah Adams didn't mean to punch a guy in the face that night, but when the man shoved the woman beside him so hard she nearly hit the floor, instinct took over. "Back off," Noah growled, stepping between the woman and the drunk guy slurring insults at her. The guy laughed, swung, and missed. Noah didn't. The bar went silent for a beat. Then chaos, the bouncer barreled over. The drunk guy was dragged out, still shouting. The woman, wide-eyed and holding her cheek, looked up at Noah like he'd just saved her life. "Are you okay?" he asked, breath heavy. She nodded slowly, her voice soft. Yeah, thanks. Come on," he said, gently steering her toward the exit. "Let's get you out of here." Outside, the street was buzzing with late-night noise. Noah took off his worn flannel jacket and draped it over her shoulders. She was shivering. "Do you want me to call someone for you?" he asked. She hesitated. "No, I'm good. I'll call a car in a minute." "You sure?" he asked again, squinting at her in the streetlight. She looked out of place here. Her heels were scuffed from the bar floor, but her dress, tight black silk and probably expensive, looked like it belonged at a high-end gala, not a dive bar on Main Street. She smiled faintly. "I'm sure. You're the one who ended up in a fight. Are you okay?" he shrugged. "Been through worse." She tilted her head. "You didn't even know me. Why did you step in?" Noah let out a breath, running a hand through his messy brown hair. "Didn't really think about it. I've got a daughter." Couldn't stand the thought of someone doing that to her someday, and nobody stepping in. Her expression softened. "You're a dad," he nodded. "Yeah, Hazel, she's 6, wild little thing, smart as anything. Loves dinosaurs and chocolate chip waffles." The woman chuckled quietly, and for the first time he noticed the warmth in her eyes. "She sounds amazing." "She is," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "I'm Noah, by the way. Juliette," she answered after a pause. "Juliette Walker. Nice to meet you, Juliette." They stood in silence for a moment, the city lights painting her hair gold. Then she looked at him again, really looked. He was tall, broad-shouldered, square-jawed, but there was a tiredness in his eyes. Like life had hit him hard, and he was still standing only because he had no other choice. Juliette didn't say anything about it. Instead, she asked, "Can I buy you a drink? Somewhere less punchy," he blinked. "You still want to go out? I don't want to go home yet." "And I owe you one." Noah hesitated. "I don't usually do this kind of thing. I've got to get up early. Hazel's got school, and I've got work." "What do you do?" "I'm a mechanic. I work out of this little garage on 4th, just trying to keep things going for her." Juliette's stomach twisted. He had no idea who she was. No idea she didn't need to work a day in her life if she didn't want to. No idea she flew in private jets and owned 2 penthouses in different cities. But tonight, she didn't want to be Juliette Walker, daughter of real estate tycoon Graham Walker. Tonight, she just wanted to be the girl who got saved by a good man. "Then how about coffee?" she asked. 10 minutes, my treat." He scratched the back of his neck. "All right." 10 minutes. The corner cafe was mostly empty. Late-night jazz hummed through the speakers. Juliette stirred her cappuccino while Noah sipped black coffee, one hand wrapped around the chipped mug. "So," she said, "you and Hazel, just the 2 of you?" "Yeah," he said, setting the mug down. "Her mom left when she was 3, said it was too hard, said I was too broke and too tired. She wasn't wrong about either." Juliette's chest tightened. "I'm sorry," he shrugged. "Hazel's the best thing that ever happened to me. I'd do it all again, even the hard parts." She studied him. There was something grounding about him. No fancy words, no ego, just a man trying to give his daughter the world with bare hands and scraped knuckles. "I bet she's proud of you," she said. He smiled, but it was sad. "I hope so." Juliette reached across the table and touched his hand. "She is." "I can tell." Noah looked at her hand resting on his. She had soft skin, a diamond ring on her pinky, small but real, probably worth more than his truck. "Why were you at that bar tonight?" he asked. She paused. "I needed to get out. I had this charity gala tonight. Bunch of people trying to impress each other. I left early, changed in the car, walked into the first bar I saw." "Why?" She looked him in the eye. "Because I was tired of people only talking to me because of my last name." Noah frowned. "What do you mean?" Juliette hesitated. Then said, "My family's pretty well known in real estate. My dad's name is Graham Walker." Noah blinked. "Wait, the Graham Walker, the guy who built half of downtown." She nodded. He leaned back like he wasn't sure what to say. "So you're a millionaire?" "Yeah," she said quietly. "Probably more. I don't even keep count." Noah stared at her for a moment, then let out a breath. Well, that explains the dress, she laughed, and you still punched a guy for me. I didn't know who you were. I know. She looked at him, her voice softer now. That's why it meant something. They sat in silence again, but this time it was warm, comfortable. Then Juliette said, "Do you want to see me again?" Noah looked down, then back up. "I got a kid. I don't have time for games." "Neither do I," she replied, his lips tugged into a real smile. "All right, I'll pick you up Friday, but we're going somewhere with food, real food, not espresso and guilt." Juliette grinned. "Deal." And for the first time in a long time, Noah walked out into the night with something that felt a lot like hope. The scent of frying bacon mixed with the sound of laughter as Hazel launched herself into Noah's arms the moment he stepped through the door. He caught her easily, lifting her high before setting her down with exaggerated care. "Daddy," she beamed. "Guess what? I counted to 100 backward today." "You did?" he asked, crouching to meet her eyes. "That's amazing, sweet pea. You owe me a chocolate waffle," she said, triumphantly holding up one tiny finger. "You drive a hard bargain," he grinned. "One waffle it is." "But just the one deal," she nodded solemnly. Martha, their neighbor from 2 doors down, handed him his keys. She was an angel, didn't even ask for ice cream this time. "She's learning your weaknesses," Noah said, taking the keys. "Thanks again, Martha." "Anytime," she said with a wink. "You just better not forget my birthday again." "I'll make you a cake myself," he promised. After she left and Hazel was busy rearranging her dinosaur toys on the coffee table, Noah stepped into the kitchen. He leaned against the fridge, letting out a breath. He hadn't expected to feel nervous, but he did. Juliette, she'd said yes to seeing him again. And not in a polite, brush-it-off sort of way. She meant it. He glanced at the clock. Friday was tomorrow. He had a half paycheck coming in, a chipped windshield on the truck, and a daughter who needed new sneakers. But he also had a woman who'd seen something in him, a woman who didn't flinch at his worn boots or his calloused hands. He pulled out his phone and stared at the screen. No social media. No fancy restaurants bookmarked. Just a list of places he could afford on a budget. He wasn't going to take her to a place with laminated menus and sticky booths. He walked over to the window, watching the rain smear against the glass. There was an old Italian place tucked between a laundromat and a bookstore on 5th. Red tablecloths, real candles, live guitar some nights. He'd done a few repairs for the owner last summer in exchange for meals. "Maybe, Daddy, can you help me build the T-Rex trap?" He turned, pushing thoughts of restaurants away. "Absolutely." The next day, after dropping Hazel at school and pulling a long shift at the garage, Noah stood in front of his bathroom mirror, trying to convince himself the collar of his only decent shirt didn't itch. He'd shaved, trimmed his hair, and even cleaned the inside of his truck for the first time in weeks. He picked her up at 7. She was waiting outside a quiet block on the edge of downtown, wrapped in a navy coat and holding a small black clutch. Her hair was pulled back, not like the night at the bar, but in a way that made her cheekbones look sharper than before. "You clean up all right," she teased, sliding into the passenger seat. He blinked. "You look good, just good," she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Really good," he admitted, starting the engine. They didn't talk much on the drive. Just enough for her to hum along when an old rock ballad came on the radio. He noticed how she tapped her fingers against her thigh in rhythm. She didn't ask where they were going, and he didn't volunteer it. The restaurant was dimly lit, warm, and smelled like garlic and fresh basil. A man with silver hair greeted Noah by name and showed them to a small table in the corner without a menu in sight. "Marco owes me a favor," Noah explained once they were seated. "I like this," Juliette said, running her fingertips over the linen napkin. "It's real." They ordered. He let her try his usual, stuffed eggplant with spicy marinara and a side of roasted peppers. She offered bites of her ricotta ravioli in return. By the time the second glass of wine was poured, she was leaning forward, elbows on the table. "Tell me something you've never told anyone," she said. Noah blinked. "That's a heavy ask for a second outing." "I don't like small talk," she said. "It wastes time." He looked at her for a long moment. Then said, "All right, I wanted to be a pilot when I was a kid. Used to sneak onto the roof and pretend the stars were airports." She smiled slowly. "Why didn't you become one?" He shrugged. Didn't have the money, then life happened. She nodded, then tilted her head. What about now, he repeated. Yeah, you ever think about trying again? I fix cars for a living. I'm not exactly in a position to chase clouds. Maybe not yet, she said, her voice soft. He looked at her, really looked. You don't talk like other people. You mean I say what I mean? Exactly. She took a sip of wine. Your turn, ask me something. Why'd you really go to that bar alone? Her gaze didn't falter. Because I didn't want to be Juliette Walker that night. He leaned back slightly. Then who did you want to be? Someone who could disappear without anyone noticing. He didn't reply for a moment, then said, but someone did. Their eyes met across the candlelight. Later, outside, the rain had stopped, but the pavement gleamed under the streetlights. He walked her to her door, hands in his jacket pockets. I had a good time, she said. I did too, she stepped closer. Are you going to kiss me or not? He didn't hesitate, just leaned in and kissed her, slow and certain, no rush, no games. When she pulled away, her voice was barely above a whisper. Friday can't come soon enough. He watched her go inside before turning back toward his truck, the faintest smile tugging at his mouth. For the first time in a long while, something was changing and he wasn't afraid of it. Juliette stepped into the elevator of the Walker and Row Executive Tower, her heels echoing against the marble. She had barely slept. Not because of deadlines or board meetings, but because of a man who didn't care about her last name. A man who'd kissed her like he meant it. Her assistant trailed behind her, arms full of folders. The Zurich proposal is prepped for final review. You've got lunch with Langston at 1, and your father moved the quarterly check into 3. Cancel Langston, Juliette said, walking briskly, and move the check into 4. I've got something I need to handle first. The assistant hesitated. He won't like that. He'll survive. She reached her office and shut the door behind her. The skyline stretched across the floor to ceiling windows, but Juliette didn't look at it. She went straight to her desk and opened a drawer she rarely touched. Inside was a silver frame holding a photo of her mother, taken before the Parkinson's diagnosis had stolen her spark. Juliette touched the edge of the frame. I met someone, she whispered. The office phone buzzed. She ignored it. Her father didn't know about Noah. Neither did anyone else. She'd kept that part of her life quiet, fiercely protective of the space they'd carved out between them. But the more time she spent with Noah, the more that space started to feel like a life she didn't want to keep separate anymore. That night, she stood outside the garage on 4th, watching through the window as Noah wiped his hands on a shop towel. Grease smudged across his forearm. He was laughing at something the younger guy beside him had said, and for a second she just watched him, grounded. Real, he spotted her and came to the door, pulling it open with a surprised lift of his brows. Didn't expect to see you here. I brought dinner, she said, holding up a brown bag. It's not fancy, but it's warm. He stepped aside. You just made my day. Inside, the garage smelled like oil and burnt rubber. The overhead lights buzzed faintly, casting long shadows over the concrete floor. Juliette placed the bag on a workbench, pulling out foil-wrapped sandwiches and 2 bottles of lemonade. I figured you hadn't eaten, she said as he sat on a stool. I hadn't, he admitted, unwrapping a sandwich. You didn't have to do this. I know. He took a bite, then gave her a sideways glance. You all right? I had a long day, she said, twisting the cap off her drink. Meetings, deadlines. People pretending to be polite while measuring how much power they can get out of a conversation. You want to talk about it? He asked. She shook her head. Not really, I just wanted to be here. His hands stilled. With me, she nodded. If that's okay. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stood and walked to the wall where a calendar hung beside a child's drawing. He pulled a small envelope from under a magnet and walked back to her. What's that? He handed it to her. Hazel made you something. Said you were nice and had pretty shoes. Juliette opened it carefully. Inside was a piece of paper folded into a heart, covered in glitter and marker. The words "Thank you for being kind to my daddy" were written in crooked, careful letters. She swallowed. That's probably the best thing anyone's given me in years. Noah leaned against the workbench, watching her. She doesn't warm up to people quickly, but she likes you. I like her too. He wiped his hands on the towel again. She asked if you were going to come to the school fair on Saturday. I told her probably not. Why? He looked at her. I didn't know if you'd want to. It's a bunch of kids running around with cotton candy and face paint, not exactly your scene. Juliette folded the heart back up. Do you want me there? He hesitated. Yeah, I do. Then I'll be there. Later, as she walked back to her car, Juliette's phone buzzed in her coat pocket. She glanced at the screen. A text from her father's assistant demanding confirmation for a rescheduled meeting. She turned it off and looked up at the night sky. No stars, just the glow of the city. The next day, she arrived at the school fair in jeans and a sweatshirt, her hair pulled into a low ponytail. The parking lot was packed with minivans and folding signs. She spotted Noah near a popcorn stand, Hazel perched on his shoulders, pointing excitedly at a bouncy castle. Juliette waved. Hazel squealed and squirmed to get down. You came, she shouted, running up to grab Juliette's hand. Of course I did, Juliette said, crouching to her level. You think I'd miss this? Hazel beamed. Daddy says you're really smart. He did. Juliette glanced at Noah. I said you had good taste in sandwiches, he said. She filled in the rest. They walked the fairgrounds together, playing ring toss and watching Hazel get her face painted like a velociraptor. At one point, Juliette caught Noah watching her while Hazel tied a friendship bracelet around her wrist. What? She asked. He rubbed the back of his neck. Nothing, just didn't expect this. This, you here like this, she met his eyes. Neither did I. As the sun dipped behind the school roof, they stood near the parking lot, the sound of laughter and music fading behind them. I should get her home, Noah said, lifting Hazel into the back seat of his truck. Juliette nodded. I'll walk to my car. Before she turned, he stepped forward. I know we come from different worlds, he said quietly, and I have no idea where this is going. But I'm not going to pretend this doesn't mean something. It does, she said. More than you know. He reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her cheek. Good night, Juliette. She watched his truck pull away, Hazel waving from the back window with her glittered face. Juliette stood there a long time, bracelet tight around her wrist, heart louder than it had been in years. Juliette stood at the edge of the rooftop garden, her fingers tightening around the stem of her champagne flute. The party around her buzzed with polite laughter and crystal glasses clinking, but all she could focus on was the tightness in her chest. Her father's voice floated behind her, discussing overseas development with a group of executives, but she kept her eyes on the skyline. She hadn't planned to come. Not after the week she'd had long meetings, fraying patience, and the overwhelming pull to check in with Noah every chance she got. But when the foundation's gala was moved to her family's penthouse, and her father personally called to tell her she was expected, she hadn't been able to say no. Juliette, came a voice behind her. Deep, clipped, unmistakably her father's. You've been avoiding the donors all night, she turned slowly. I've been giving them space to talk about money without me hanging over their shoulders. He gave her a look of mild disapproval. You're a walker, you don't hang. You lead, I'm aware. There's a reason I've kept you close to the core team, you're sharp, but lately you've been distracted. Juliette didn't respond, he stepped closer, lowering his voice. Is this about that mechanic? Her eyes snapped to his. You've been checking up on me. I check up on anything that might affect this company. You've been seen with him more than once. His name is Noah, she said, jaw tightening, and he's none of your concern. He's a single father who works under a car, Lyft, and lives paycheck to paycheck. You think that won't affect you, he's honest. He doesn't care about our name or our money. He sees me. And what happens when he realizes just how different your lives are? Juliette set her glass down. Then he'll have to decide if I'm worth it. You've built something here, her father said. Don't throw it away chasing something that can't last. She was about to respond when the elevator chimed behind them. Heads turned, conversations stilled. Noah stepped into the room in a pressed black button-down and dark jeans, holding a small box in one hand. His eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on her. Juliette's breath caught. He walked past murmuring guests, ignoring the stares. Juliette's father stepped in front of her, but she moved past him before he could say a word. You wore actual buttons, she said, stunned. He held up the box. I didn't come to impress anyone. What are you doing here? I figured if you weren't answering your phone, you were either busy or mad. I took a gamble. Security let you up. I told them I had something to deliver. She looked at the box. What is it? He opened it slowly. Inside was a friendship bracelet, Hazel's, now framed in a small glass case. Below it, a handwritten note, "For the girl who never missed a promise." Juliette blinked hard. "You kept this. I wanted you to know that you're not the only one who shows up." A hush had fallen nearby. Her father was watching from a distance, his expression unreadable. "Juliette didn't care. This world," she said softly, "it's loud and complicated, and it doesn't make space for people like you." "I don't need space in it," he said. "I just need you." She stepped closer. "Are you sure?" "Because there's no part of me that fits into the quiet life. I've tried to run from this world before, and it always drags me back." He reached up, brushing his knuckles down her cheek. "Then maybe it's not about running. Maybe it's about choosing what's worth staying for." She let out a shaky breath. "I'm terrified of what this means." "I'm terrified too," he admitted. "But I meant what I said. I don't have time for games. I'm not offering you some fairy tale escape. I'm offering you the truth. Me, Hazel, the life we've built. It's messy, it's loud, and it's real." Juliette looked at him for a long moment. Then, with her heart thudding louder than the music, she reached for his hand. "Come with me," she said. They walked past the curious crowd, past her father's stiff silence, into the private elevator. She pressed the button for the ground floor. As the doors closed, she turned to him. "You know this changes everything. I'm counting on it." The ride down was silent, but when the doors opened to the private valet entrance, her driver looked stunned. She waved him off. "I'm not going back upstairs." "You sure?" Noah asked. "I've never been more sure of anything." They got into his truck. He drove in silence through the city, past shimmering windows and gold-lit avenues. Finally, she leaned her head back and whispered, "Let's go home." At his place, Hazel was asleep on the couch, a blanket tucked under her chin and a dinosaur plush clutched in one arm. Juliette knelt beside her and gently brushed a curl from her forehead. "She waited up," Noah said. "Said she wanted to show you the stars from her window." Juliette glanced up. "She's beautiful. She's yours too if you want her to be." Juliette stood, turning to him. "I don't want pieces of this," she said. "I want all of it. I'm not walking away again." He pulled her into his arms. "Then stay." They stood there, wrapped in something deeper than words, while the old heater rattled in the corner and the faint hum of the city pulsed outside. Weeks later, the garage had a new sign: Adams and Walker Auto. The office smelled like fresh paint and new beginnings. Juliette leaned against the counter, laughing at something Hazel said as Noah walked in, grease on his hands and a grin he didn't bother hiding. He wrapped an arm around her waist and kissed her temple. Hazel tugged on her sleeve, holding up a crayon drawing of the three of them under a rainbow with a truck and a dinosaur in the background. "Think we can frame that one too?" he asked. Juliette nodded. "It's already perfect," and for the first time in both their lives, nothing felt missing. Juliette stood at the edge of the community gymnasium, watching Hazel zip through a maze of balloons and handmade banners. The Family Day fundraiser was in full swing, and the place pulsed with music, children's laughter, and the smell of baked goods. The event had been Noah's idea, quietly proposed during a town meeting, then suddenly funded overnight when Juliette made a few phone calls and transferred the difference from an account she hadn't touched in years. He was across the room now, bent over a table helping two kids glue googly eyes onto paper rockets. His gray T-shirt clung to his shoulders, and his forearms were streaked with watercolor. One of the kids squealed, and he burst out laughing, tossing his head back in a way that made Juliette's chest ache in the best kind of way. She turned as a woman approached holding a clipboard. "You're Juliette?" the woman asked. "Yes. I just wanted to say thank you. We haven't had a fundraiser bring in this many families in over a decade." Juliette smiled gently. "I'm glad it worked out." "It's more than that," the woman said. "This place, it's the heart of this neighborhood, and the fact that someone like you showed up, participated, didn't just write checks. It means something." Juliette looked over at Hazel, now dragging her dinosaur plush through a sea of streamers. "It means something to me too." When the woman left, Juliette made her way over to Noah, who was now wiping green paint off a plastic table. "Busy saving the world one googly eye at a time?" she asked. He looked up, eyes warm. "You should see the mess Hazel made in the corner." She turned a paper plate into a pterodactyl with glitter wings. Juliette laughed. "I'm both terrified and impressed. He glanced around the room, then leaned closer. We raised over 12,000, she blinked. Seriously, I checked with the volunteers 10 minutes ago. People kept showing up. She looked around, taking in the crowded room, parents laughing, kids comparing face paint, neighbors sharing stories over lemonade. This is because of you. Because of us, he corrected. You made people care. You brought attention to something no one was looking at. Juliette shook her head. I just made a few calls. He reached for her hand, his fingers threading through hers. You made the calls, you showed up, you stayed. That's what changed everything. A cluster of children darted between them, Hazel among them, waving a blue ribbon she'd clearly won from one of the games. She grinned, then ran back toward the decorations. Juliette looked up at Noah. She's thriving. She's never had anyone like you in her life before, Noah. I mean that. He led her to a quieter corner near the windows where the noise fell away just enough. I've been thinking, he said, his voice low. Dangerous, she teased. He didn't smile. Instead, he reached into his back pocket and pulled out a small box, not velvet, but smooth wood, polished and simple. Juliette's breath hitched. He opened it slowly. Inside was a narrow gold band with a tiny emerald set into the center. Understated, elegant, nothing like the extravagant pieces she'd grown up seeing. I can't give you a fortune, Noah said, but I can give you a life, one with burnt pancakes on Sundays and dance parties in the kitchen with Hazel. One where love doesn't come with conditions. She stared at the ring, then at him. I don't need anything else, she whispered. So is that a yes? She didn't answer. She kissed him instead, deep, sure, with every promise she couldn't find the words for. When she pulled back, her voice trembled. Yes, of course, yes. Hazel appeared a second later, tugging at Juliette's sleeve. What did I miss? Noah crouched quickly. Juliette's going to be part of our family. That okay with you? Hazel tilted her head. Does that mean she stays forever? Juliette knelt, her eyes level with Hazel's. If you'll have me. Hazel threw her arms around her. I'll make you a new bracelet, she said. This one will have stars. Later that summer, the three of them stood under a white awning in the backyard of their newly remodeled home, a modest 2-story with a porch Hazel had already claimed for tea parties. The ceremony was small. Friends, neighbors, a few faces from the garage, and a woman from the community center who cried through the whole thing. Juliette wore a dress she'd found in a boutique tucked behind a flower shop. Nothing designer, just soft ivory cotton and lace along the sleeves. Noah wore a navy suit he'd borrowed from one of the groomsmen, the jacket slightly too big but the look in his eyes fitting just right. Hazel held both their hands as they said their vows. When the officiant pronounced them husband and wife, she burst into giggles, shouting, "You may now start the forever dance." The reception was held under strings of glowing lanterns. There was no string quartet or catered 5-course meal, just homemade pies, laughter, and a playlist Hazel had personally curated. Juliette danced barefoot on the grass, her hair loose and wild, while Noah spun her around like there was nothing else in the world but her. That night, after Hazel had fallen asleep curled between 2 pillows in her new starlight-themed bedroom, Juliette stepped out onto the porch. Noah joined her moments later, handing her a blanket and pulling her into his arms. You remember the first night we met? He asked, resting his chin on her head. Of course. I didn't know anything about you. I just knew you looked like someone who needed saving. She turned in his arms. You didn't save me, Noah. You reminded me I could choose something real. He brushed her hair back. So what do you choose now, you? She said. Every day, every version, every messy, beautiful piece of this life. He kissed her, slow and certain. They stood there, wrapped in warmth, while the stars blinked above and the soft sounds of the city faded into something quieter, something steadier. And for the first time, neither of them looked back.